The Witcher. As the Monstrum Tome explains to the common people of the world, indeed there is nothing more repulsive than these monsters that defy nature and are known by the name of Witcher, as they are the offspring of foul sorcery and witchcraft. They are unscrupulous scoundrels without conscience and virtue, veritable creatures from hell, capable only of taking lives. In other words, they sound pretty damn villainous, right? So why would Andrzej Sapkowski dedicate his entire series of fantasy novels to such a monstrous creation? Isn't this a time for heroes? How can such a hated figure lead the path to righteousness and virtue, protector of the weak and innocent? Well, it's probably high time that we found out. Hello horror fans, what's going on? And once again, welcome back to the Scary Channel on YouTube, top 5 scary videos. As per usual, I'll be your horror host Jack Finches. Today, we resume our Lore Explored series, and to my sheer joy, we take a look at The Witcher. Roll the clip.
I remember hearing stories about witches. Is it true what they say?
For the curious amongst you, that clip was of course from the up and coming Netflix series starring Henry Cavill as the Witcher himself, Geralt of Rivia. And you know, I'm actually pretty stoked about it, and I'm fairly confident that Netflix and Cavill as a whole are going to do a great job. And if you're asking me, anything that furthers this remarkable and fantastic world is worthy of note. But I'm also of the mind that in my head canon there is only one Butcher of Blaviken, and he exists in CD Projekt Red's near perfect video game series voiced by Doug Cockle. I hope to be proved wrong, but yeah.
Been through hell and high water, you and me. Fact is, you know me better than anyone else does.
Anyway, housekeeping aside, let's dive into this Lore Explored, because we're going to be doing things a little differently with this episode. Instead of covering the series as a whole and necessarily focusing on the larger themes, we're going to be focusing on the exact role of the Witcher in this fantasy world, where they came from, their purpose as an organization, and anything else that comes with being the mutagenic anti-heroes that they are. Personally, I think the best way to explore Sapkowski's world is through the eyes of a Witcher. Well, the cat's eyes of a Witcher, but we'll get to that. First and foremost, I should probably not get too ahead of myself, because if you can't tell, I'm very excited, and for the non-Witcher fanatics amongst you, we should first give a little overview as to what we're dealing with. Back in 1993, Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski released his first novel in the Witcher series, The Last Wish. It introduced to us an intriguing character, Geralt of Rivia, a mysterious man who had been terribly injured in battle and was resting at the temple of Melitele, being tended by mute servants whilst recounting many of the violent paths that had led him there. Unlike many other fantasy novels, this one was a collection of short stories, interwoven by Geralt's continued mystery whilst establishing one particular thing very, very clearly. This guy Geralt, yeah, he's seen some shit. And that, horror fans, is merely the beginning, because as is revealed in the edge of the world, Geralt of Rivia is part of an ancient order whose role in this bloodthirsty world is to hunt down the many monsters of folklore and legend that plague the countryside or linger in deep forgotten caverns, making the world a better place one decapitated wyvern's head at a time. But of course, only for a price. And that price is important, because now we can talk about exactly what it takes to join this hazardous profession and the many pros and cons that come with it. But to comprehend that, we need to first understand where they came from, and truth be told, that's a difficult thing to do, because part of the allure of the Witcher series is that the origin of these mysterious mercenaries is so ancient, so rooted in a world that once was, that this new world, the one that they protect without question, has forgotten them. And in turn, you could say that the purpose behind the traditions of the Witcher order have been forgotten even by themselves. You see, it's a key theme that is thread throughout Sapkowski's series, the overwhelming antiquity of the world that it takes place in. But there is a reason for that, because we do know one thing, and we may have an inkling as to just exactly why the Witchers came into being. Maybe. Anyway, you see, around 1500 years before Sapkowski's series takes place, an event occurred, an event known as the Conjunction of the Spheres, a cataclysm which converged a myriad of multi-dimensional worlds and essentially forged them together into one. The one here in question, where the series takes place. You see, the native races to that world, the elder races, were the gnomes, the most ancient, the dwarves and the elves, but their existence was interrupted by this event. Soon came a horde of unnatural creatures from the fragments of the multiverse. Ghouls, gravers, vampires, ancient spirits of shadow and fire and ice. But it wasn't just monsters that emerged too, but men. The race of humans soon appeared, their old world destroyed by the conjunction of the spheres, dazed and confused and without a home. Well, during that time, these first settlers spread to the north of their strange new home, partly being taught by their elven neighbours how to wield chaos as magic, but only a select few because, come on, they don't just hand out magic willy-nilly. You see, when these tired and hopeless settlers futilely attempted to colonise these new, untamed lands filled with monsters and murder, they needed protecting. An elite caste of warrior monks gradually began to emerge from their ranks, human defenders who braved the wilds by sheer will alone, and soon found that other ancient magics lurked there. Out in the wilderness, these warrior monks studied these strange mushrooms and fungi that grew there. They documented herbs and plant stimulants, and soon they took that knowledge and created concoctions that gave them a bold advantage against these monsters. However, they also noticed something strange. They noticed that the bodies of their young apprentices developed superhuman speed and endurance. Well, the ones that survived anyway, because you see, this is where a concept known as the Trial of the Grasses emerges, the most important initiation rite to becoming a witcher, rooted in their humble beginnings as herbalists and alchemists. And when I say important, I really mean it, because there are only two options with the Trial of the Grasses. You pass it and become a witcher, or you die, with 7 out of 10 candidates usually dying in the process. Ultimately, this alchemical process is integral to the Order of the Witcher. It mutates their genes permanently, imbibing them with heightened senses, strength, reflexes, and resistances to essentially all disease. In other terms, they literally become a monster in order to fight them, sacrificing their humanity to become a mutant specifically built to hunt and kill all inhuman prey across their strange new world. As a result of this painful and dangerous process, the young survivors would gain cat-like eyes whose pupils would dilate to see in the most blinding of light or the darkest of darkness. Sense in a metaphor there. As you may imagine, at the origin of this order, it was frighteningly effective, but the price to be paid was staggering. First and foremost, all witches would become sterile, making it impossible for them to pass on their traits, but also instilling them with an incredibly long lifespan and prolonged youth, often existing for several centuries and only ever appearing as middle-aged men at the most. This unnatural life cycle laid down the foundation that would make the common folk of the world so weary and hateful of these individuals, despite these witches being the only line of defense that they had against the horrors that lingered in the darkness. You see, soon after the Trial of the Grasses seemed to be a viable option for combating these monsters. You remember those magic studying aristocrats that I mentioned before? Yeah, by that time the Nordling monarchy realised that they could use these newly created mutant knights to bend toward their will, and gave them the basis to form their order, finalising this set of trials and mutations that would pave the way toward future generations of young apprentices becoming witchers. But that was merely a footnote, and the elven mages behind the monarchy, as well as their new human mages, realised that they couldn't really do anything with these poison-drinking warrior monks after all, and so quickly they pulled a plug on their order. Despite that though, the witches that remained trudged on, and so splintered and abandoned by the new monarchy, they carved out the body of their order and the many differing schools that would then form the basis of them. You see, sometime between the Order of the Witcher developing their ranks after they splintered from the monarchy, their membership realised that there were many ways to fight these monsters, and all of them didn't entirely agree on the same approach. They realised that spreading themselves into different areas and thus specialising in the art of monster hunting would strengthen their cause and also earn them a pretty penny in the process. This act built the basis of the 7 known schools of the Witchers. Now, as a footnote, there are potentially more, but like we said, there are more mysteries in this series than Andrzej Sapkowski would like to admit. Now, perhaps the most prominent of these schools, and the one that Geralt of Rivia belongs to, is the School of the Wolf, whose ancestral stronghold is in the mountains of Kaer Morhen in Kedwin. In its days of glory, the School of the Wolf was perhaps the most recognised of all of the Witcher schools, with its members quickly gaining the renowned reputation of professional and reliable monster slayers. Geralt is good for a reason. Eventually being led by the wise and noble Vesemir, who would serve to be the sagely master of Geralt himself. Next there was the School of the Cat, a group of ragtag witches whose headquarters originally being in Stygia before they were cast out were anything from stationary. And at the time of Geralt they are located in the travelling caravan in the southern region of Dinmarth. Now the School of the Cat is incredibly interesting, as unlike many of their counterparts, this group eventually grew to embrace their repressed emotions and began killing for a cause and a purpose other than coin. They would become assassins lingering in royal courts to supposedly bring about a plot of witcher dominance, and because of that fear ultimately led to their downfall. The monarchy was so weary of the School of the Cat that they sent an entire army to slaughter them, destroying their stronghold of Stygia and casting them out on the road, seeking a new sort of vengeance. Then there is the Order of the Viper, located in the deep chasms of Tir Toker, who were essentially extinct at the time of Geralt, although I'm saying nothing because these witches are a different breed entirely, and writing them off isn't the wisest of moves. The Order of the Viper are perhaps the most alien and secretive of all of their kind, who dedicated their lives to collecting and compiling ancient tomes and scrolls on the antiquities of the ancient world and the conjunction of the spheres that predated them. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to these guys. Vipers usually means mystery, I guess. Of course there is the School of the Bear, a group who hold a special place in my heart, mainly because these guys are just unbridled badasses. Located in the keep of Hen Kaduk in Amal, deep in the mountainous region of the world, the School of the Bear sought solace with the elder races of the world, establishing ancient contacts with the dwarves and gnomes that called this region their home. Despite that though, the School of the Bear saw a solitary path, roaming the world, heavily fortified in their armour, taking things slowly and decimating anything foolish enough to step into their path. You see, although at the time of Geralt the School of the Bear is thought to be extinct, it's heavily suggested that they are. Bears are solitary creatures after all. And then there's the Griffin School, the one order of witches that maintained the same knightly values laid out by the monarchy after their poorly conceived experiment. Little is known about them other than the fact that they're obsessed with magic and have a habit of killing every and any griffin in any given region. And then finally there's the School of the Manticore, and really guys, that one is anyone's guess, because the School of the Manticore is of a different world, shall we say. You see, all of these laid the foundation for the very concept of the Witcher. These figures weren't just blustering knights who had a sword and a divine purpose. These were an order of protectors, human beings who saw that the only way to combat evil and darkness that lingered in the wilderness was to become a part of it, to adapt, to learn the ways of their enemies and use it against them. Listen guys, I could talk about the Witcher series as a whole for an entire day, week, maybe a month. And maybe we'll be doing just that depending on the direction that this series takes. But if you haven't been able to tell by now, if you haven't taken a look into this fantastic and vivid lore, you certainly should. Whether it's Sapkowski's series, the video game interpretations, or heck, even the 2001 Hexa series. Peek your head into this strange and mysterious world, conjoin your spheres, and I'm certain you'll like what you see. Well, there we have it guys. In fear of rambling on for too long, that's my overview of The Witcher. What do you guys think? How are you feeling about this new series? Do you love it? Do you think it's lame? Or just want to comment on what t-shirt I'm wearing today? Then you know the drill. Let us know your thoughts down in the comment section below, as well as any suggestions on where we should next take this series. Before we depart from today's video though, if you'd like to continue on with our Lore Explored series, please make sure to take a look at our newly compiled playlist. We've got Vampires and the SCP Foundation, so it can all tickle your fancy. And hopefully plenty more where that came from. On that note, unfortunately that's all we've got time for in today's video. Cheers for sticking around all the way until the end. If you were a fan of this video, or just top 5 scary videos in general, then please be a dear and hit that thumbs up button, as well as that subscribe bell, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. As per usual, I've been your horror host Jack Finch. You've been watching top 5 scary videos, and until next time, you take it easy.